What's up, everybody? How are you? Welcome to, let's see if I can do this right. Yeah, look at that. That's it. Love Hacks. We got Love Hacks coming at you with Lisa Marie, of course, my partner in crime. And we have a special guest today, one of my favorite people, one of my regulars on the other shows that we do, Miss Amy Gibb Gish. And no, she does not know Maurice. So let's get started on that right now and just stay tuned.
Check it.
Feels right, it feels right, yeah. I'm only saying that it feels right.
All right, we are here. It is Love Hacks. That is the time. It's 7 o'clock on a Wednesday, and that's when we do this show. So make sure you write that down on your calendar with the big fat heart on it. Yeah, just like the heart of these hands. Uh-oh, right behind me. I got to figure out how to do that stuff. Anyway, and as always, the co-host of the show, and actually, really, she should be considered the host, is Miss Lisa Marie. And Lisa, you're awesome. How are you today? You look great.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing great. How you doing, Lee?
I'm doing good. Listen, so earlier, ladies and gentlemen, we had a little bit of, before we came on the air, a little bit of technical traffic, weird Nick stuff. So maybe Wednesday night might be a heavy night on the world of the internet. Maybe that's why we're not getting all that. But we're going to push through and power through and just go with it because that's who we are. We're professionals. Look it up in the book. No doubt about that. And we have today, Lisa. What are we going to talk about?
Oh, what would you like to talk about today, Lee?
Oh, see, don't do that to me.
Well, I got a couple of ideas. We can talk about transactional relationships. How about that?
Transactional relationships. That's awesome
Mhm.
because I have no idea what you're talking about. So I can
I know.
definitely chime in when you start talking about it. We have a special guest, and I'm willing to bet she knows about transactional relationships because she's a super smart girl, just like you are. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I love doing shows with women because they are just make the show shine. Let me tell you. So we bring on, without further ado, my buddy Amy, the diva. How are you, Amy?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm looking down at you because that's what you. It looks like you're right there below me. I'm good, Lisa.
And my
you've
screen
met
froze up
Amy,
again.
but we can
Yes.
hear you fine though. If you can hear us,
I know,
just
but
keep pushing forward.
I'm going to jump out and jump back because I don't know what's
All
going on
right.
here.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
that's all right. So Lisa, now see that's what my problem's going to be, calling people by the wrong name. So, hey Diva, so do you know what she means by transactional relationships?
I'm not sure. I
Wow.
want to know her definition for what
Yeah, me
constitutes
neither.
an actual relationship.
Well, this is what she does, so we'll find out in here
Mhm.
when she comes back. And we're going to find out what the transactional relationships are and how. And Steve Woodall, hey guys, cool. So, yeah, where is she? There she is. So Lisa, Steve
I
Woodall
told you I'd be
says,
back.
I know. Steve Woodall says hello. How are you?
Hi,
so I wanted to
Steve.
pass that along.
My name's not Andrea.
Oh
So
God, no, he called you Lisa actually this time. Hi, Lisa
that's-
Marie. How
that's
about
good.
that? How about that?
that's good. He's getting better every day.
All right, so educate us here, Lisa. Transactional relationships. Tell me what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know what you're talking about, but I don't know it in that vernacular. So, what are you
Okay.
talking about?
So, well, I really didn't know what it meant till years ago. I was dating this guy, and we had gone out a few times, and he'd never mentioned getting serious. And one day I just kind of said, "Hey, why haven't you, made us official or whatever?" And he said, "Well, what do you bring? What do you have to bring to the table, right?" And I thought, well, that's an odd question. I mean, I bring me. I mean, I'm awesome. What more do you want, right?
That's
Um,
right.
Yeah, so I was a little confused and I was a little, offended probably. And so, um, I didn't really get what he was talking about. But apparently, people have different relationship styles. And um, some people look at relationships not as just companionship, but what do you bring to the table? So they look at it like if I do this, then you do that. If I pay the bills, then you do the cooking and cleaning, or if I do this, then you do that, right? And so they don't really look at relationships as companionship. Like I really like hanging out with you. My life's more fun because you're just here with me. They actually look at it as sort of a transaction. Like, what do you bring to the table? Which was it was something that I hadn't really ever thought about. It was new to me. But now that I'm in, doing coaching and things like that, I see it more often with a lot of people where they're in the dating field and they're meeting people, but they're like, what does this person bring to the table? And it's still, to me, I was always one that thought was just your companionship. I enjoy your company and my life's better with you in it. But apparently that's not the way everybody thinks.
So it's
So
transactional. Is a transactional relationship? Is it a codependence or a dependent kind of
it's
relationship?
to me, it's almost like a business transaction.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to provide this and you're going to provide that, right? So if I work and I pay the bills, then you're going to stay home and take care of the kids, or whatever. It's like a business arrangement type of a thing.
Sure.
Which
Sure.
it's not like a partnership where we have a common goal and we both work toward that. We share all the responsibilities and the household chores and the bills and the ups and downs. It's so and it's more prevalent in certain cultures than
Sure.
it is here.
It used to be in ours big time.
Yes, absolutely. But it still exists, and we're a very, very multicultural society now as well. And some people are more old fashioned in that way, So I just thought that was an interesting topic to bring up because so many people still kind of hold those beliefs. And I think it's probably, I think probably I see it more in men than women. So, it's another one of those things where if you go into the relationship or you're dating somebody and you think it's all about companionship, and then like I've said before, guys would come to me and be like, "Oh, you don't cook, so I mean, what use are you? You know what I mean? You're not useful at all." Next, so. So it's the one of the hard things about dating these days is if you're not on the same page with that person and that type of thinking, it's not going to work out. And there are women that are also transactional that way too,
Sure.
where they're willing to forego their career and do this and that and stay home and take care of the kids if the guy's going to pay all the bills and do whatever like that. So. Some people are looking for more of a partnership, teamwork, and others are looking at it more of like a business transaction.
Well, and let's look at this.
So,
I mean, I think there's a lot of men and or women, more so men, I think, in my mind. But a transactional relationship has a lot to do a lot of times with sex also. I mean, there's men who
yes.
think, well, I'm paying the bills and your job is
so you better
jump in bed with me whenever I want you to.
That's right.
And or women are, okay, you buy me shoes and nice dresses and purses and I'll jump into bed with you. That kind of thing. And it's like, so there's both. And now I know that's a manipulative relationship as well, but
it's transactional,
Sure.
It's manipulative if only one person knows the game, but if they're both in the same game, it's the transactional relationship, right?
So is this driven by go ahead. Let's say, is this driven by a personality type, or are they like this all the time with every relationship, or do some of these people pick and choose?
I think that I see it a lot where a guy was raised in that situation in his family, where maybe his parents didn't really love each other, but they stayed together because they each had a purpose, and they kind of just made it work because, but they didn't sleep in the same rooms together. They didn't hang out together. They didn't necessarily love each other, but they stayed together because it was a functional arrangement. And so I think if a guy comes from that type of a family, he's more likely to have that kind of a mindset. Where I never did. I know I grew up in a family where both of my parents worked and they both split the chores and they both did this and that. So when I was younger and I was first confronted with somebody that had that kind of mindset, I was a little bit taken aback by, like, what do you mean? What do I bring to the table on me? So it took me a little while to understand that. But once I understood it, things became a little more clear to me that that's just how he was raised. And so there are still people that way. And I think it usually gets passed down from their family situation, where they come from.
And cultural. I mean, there's a lot of cultures that, like, for instance, you look at the Indian culture that has arranged marriages, and they put together marriages. Well, there's not a lot of love involved often in those situations, but there's a respectful exchange of duties,
of obligations.
Obligations, yes. Exactly, and that carries down to the children. I mean, because there's no insurance or retirement in those communities, and guess what your retirement is? Your son. So
yes,
and and he grows up knowing that. He grows up knowing he's going to have to take care of his parents. So and that they're going to raise him and put that's a whole different thing beyond dating, but it kind of goes together, because then when he's getting ready to either find a mate or be hooked up with a mate, he's just going to carry that same thought process with him into the next realm. And so there's a lot of conflict when that comes to coming to this country, because you meet somebody to date them and you figure, well, I like this person, we should just get married, because it's no big deal to get married. And to somebody else, it's a big deal. And there's lots of stuff involved. But
yeah. And, sometimes it seems like in the beginning, you just enjoy each other's company when you're dating or whatever. And then once you move in together, then it's all of a sudden all these expectations are here. Like, hey, how come you didn't do my laundry? How come you didn't go to the grocery store? How come? And I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that. I mean, I thought we were kind of like buddies and teammates, right? I didn't realize that this was going to be my job. So I think those types of things are things that you need to consider when you're dating somebody early on.
And communicate with them.
Yeah. I've had guys that just pulled the old switcheroo, like, we're hanging out, having a great time and this and that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're not doing this, that. And I'm like, I didn't know that was my job. It's like, thanks for telling me. So, that's another one of the things that makes dating these days more complicated. But if you can kind of communicate those expectations early on, you won't waste as much time as what I did in some of those situations,
Yeah. It's really interesting listening to what you're saying, because I'm 51, and I have a lot of friends who are on their second marriages, whether it's because they're widowed or they're divorced, or maybe they never married and they were in a long-term relationship and things just kind of ended. I see a lot more of that transactional relationship behavior, I think, in some of the older people, where they have a lot more life experience, and whether there's kids involved or careers or things like that, they seem to approach it a little bit differently than the 18-year-old driven by passion and young love. And it's a little bit more intentional, and they know a little bit more about what they want and need the other person to bring to the table. Maybe they, the life lessons make them a little bit more knowledgeable. So that's kind of interesting to think about that.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Really
and Yeah, well, like you said, if somebody's divorced and they're used to, well, my wife always did this and she always did that and she did all the cooking and
Mm-hmm.
cleaning and the laundry and the grocery shopping and she did all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, so now you're going to date me and I have to take her place and take over all her
Mm-hmm.
duties, even though, I run 4 businesses. I can't do that. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had time,
Mm-hmm.
but now I have big shoes to fill and not the time to
Mm-hmm.
fill them.
True.
Right.
So yeah, if they got used to that in their previous marriage
Mm-hmm.
or previous relationship, they have
Yeah.
those expectations.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, like you were saying, transactional. Let's if we're
yeah,
gonna head into a relationship, then we got to split the cost on someone to clean and cook. Because I'm not gonna
yeah,
do it, you ain't gonna do it. Then we need to bring somebody in who can do it, or we need
yeah. I
to
mean,
make the money
if
to.
I'm working,
Yeah,
yeah, if I'm working 18 hours a day, let's split the cost of a cleaning crew to come in once a week and do all this. I'm fine with that.
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
I
There
mean,
ain't nothing
it's
wrong
cheaper
with it.
than me. Yeah, it's cheaper than me quitting my job and doing that all day. So um,
Exactly, and men and women find that with childcare too. So how much is childcare? Is it enough that you can still work and have the child care? Of course, some women want to continue to work even though it's still costing them above what they're
yeah,
making to take care of the children,
yeah,
which happens a lot. But it gives them that break to
yes,
go to work. You know what I mean? And that's totally understandable. And vice versa for men.
right.
The guy's not, because in
Mhm.
my case, if we had to worry about childcare in my relationship, I would be quitting my job, and staying home,
Staying home, yeah,
because
yeah,
but she makes plenty more than that, but I don't, and so it'd be cheaper for me to just
yeah.
be at home taking care of kids and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and then I'd get in trouble every day because I'd forget to do something. But anyway, that's a whole
You,
nother
you know,
story altogether.
but that can be a dangerous situation to get into as well, because say that you're married and you have 3 kids, and so you don't make enough to cover childcare, so it's cheaper to stay home. So you stay home and you raise your kids all these years. But what happens when you get divorced? You've got no career. You don't have
Exactly,
anything.
exactly.
Everything was paid for by your husband. So you end up,
Or wife.
a 50-year-old person that's, flipping burgers, and, you lose the house, your kids are gone, and you spent your whole life not building your career while your husband was. And so you really, you're left with nothing. So that's kind
That's
of a
why it's
dangerous
called
situation.
alimony. But yeah, no, I
Um,
mean, but
they
go
don't
ahead.
necessarily do alimony in Virginia.
Mm-mm.
Right.
And divorces are not always fair. If a guy owned the home before you got married, you don't get half of it, right?
I
If
did
he
not
paid
know
the
that.
majority of the, yes, that's true. And if he paid the majority of the bills and he paid the majority of the mortgage payments, he gets the majority of the house. So I've seen a lot of women that come to me, my clients, that they did stay home, they raised their kids or whatever. And when they turn 40 or 50 years old, he changes them in for a younger model and they get left homeless. They have no career. They forgave their career to stay home and take care of the kids in the house and help him build his career, right? And they get left with nothing, nothing at all. So
Hmm.
that's kind of a dangerous situation that I've seen a lot of my clients get into. And so they come out at 50 years old and they haven't worked. If you haven't worked in 20 years, nobody's going to hire you. You
Right.
know, your
Right.
husband took the house and you're out on your own. So it's hard to recover from that. When
Right.
most people are that age or getting ready to retire, you're starting over, flipping burgers. So
Well, and on the
there's
other,
some repercussions.
go ahead.
Yeah, there's some repercussions for doing that.
Yeah. Well, I
So
remember at
that's
one
something
time.
you have to think about.
I remember one time considering helping out with a group that helped women in such a situation, especially though in situations where there was abuse involved and the women had to separate themselves from the house. But I imagine also it's a similar situation when there's a divorce going on. Um, but in any case, the deal was that they needed guys' security to come to the house while the woman brought her stuff out of the house, because in Virginia 9/10 the law is I don't know what the word is. Possession
Possession?
is 9/10 of the law. So if you have what you have in your hands, then that belongs to you. If you walk away from the house, everything you leave behind belongs to him. And so I've seen that happen in a couple of different situations. I was talking about, Lisa, the 9/10 of the law is possession. Possession is 9/10 of the law in Virginia, and they wanted me to help out with when they go back to not repossess, but the woman goes into the house and pull her stuff out, and you go in there and you help her pull her stuff out because it belongs to her. She hasn't been kicked out of the house or nothing like that, but she's not going back to that house. And if she leaves all those things behind, they become his possessions. Because, like I said,
Right.
possession is 9/10. So the whole idea was that, the day that he goes off to work, we're going to come over to the house. We're going to go in. We're going to help her move her stuff out. And we're going to be just security in case Dimwit shows up. We can keep him at bay while she continues to do what she needs to do. I always wanted to do that and never got involved with that. But I always wanted to help women who are in that situation because it's just not right. And I think the Commonwealth needs to change its ways as far as how that kind of stuff works. So, and that goes with dating relationships too. When people move in with each other and they become a common law couple, and I don't know what the time is for that to happen, but I know if you live with someone for a certain amount of time.
They don't do that in Virginia anymore. They don't recognize common law marriages. No. Yeah.
Okay, then that's not necessarily they used to. I know I had a friend who he said, "Oh, I might as well be married. We've been together for 30 years. She's my common law wife." And I'm like, "Okay, I didn't really know what the heck all that was." And I'll lean to my legal lady sitting here next to me.
Well, my clients have been through so much, and I go through it with them. So I've learned a lot through them.
No, I'm sure. Well, you can always hit up Amy if you need all that business legal advice.
Yeah.
Usually it's 12 years for common law in the states that recognize it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus an overt act. So.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's up to the
overt act.
judge.
Like, in other words, they exchange vows, but they don't really do it.
Yeah.
legally.
So that's to remedy a situation where you thought you were getting married, but the paperwork had a flaw or something wasn't right or the license wasn't properly granted, and then you lived together for 20 years thinking that the marriage was legitimate, and then you go to find out that something was wrong. And legally you never were married, but you had that overt act. So you can do that, or just over the time you refer to yourself as Mr. and Mrs. So there's a couple different ways to sort of prove that. So you can't just date and make sure everybody knows that you're not married for 20 years and all of a sudden go, oh, by the way, I'm going to pretend we're married because I want half of your stuff. So
Right.
there's some checks and balances on common law.
Yeah, and it's really it comes down to the judge. In the end, that will be the deciding factor, So they pretty much will rule on that. So you can't. It just depends on who your judge is that day and what mood they're in. So, but yeah, so that's there's a lot of things to consider, especially as you get older and dating in your 40s and 50s, and divorced and you've got kids, and there's a lot of reasons why people are having such difficulty dating these days, and so those are just some of the stuff that I see on a regular basis, problems that people.
It's weird to me. It's weird to me that people really expect another human being to be subservient to them. It's just so odd to me. I mean, I've grown up in a household where, like, my grandmother did everything for everybody because she wanted to. That was her joy in being a servant. No one asked her to be. No one asked her to be a servant. No one asked her to do the things, but she just did them. And then if you didn't let her, if you went to go do something that she would rather do for you, she'd be like, "What are you doing?" and it would get a little tense because she's like, I'll take care of that. You go have a seat. It's like,
Well, it comes from how you're raised. I mean, if her mother was that way and that was her mother's job, which most likely it was, because women didn't work out of the home back then.
right.
So, you're obviously going to carry that on. Now, in my case, like my mother was high level government employee and worked, and so, I didn't come from that background, that situation. So, I can't.
But your mom still would come home from work and cook dinner and stuff, yes? Or who did the dinner cooking in your house?
Whoever got there first,
Okay.
they just, however it worked out, so.
Dad brings home pizza.
They worked. Yeah, I mean, they both worked, but, they were at times, whichever one had the longer day or the longer drive or whatever. And, I mean, they stayed married, until my mother passed away. So they got married at 18 and I think she died at 50. And then he
Wow.
never remarried and then he passed away. And so their marriage, was till death do them part,
That's
and
right.
it worked out for them. And my mother worked the whole time. And so I didn't come from that type of a background. So if somebody goes in the kitchen and starts cooking, I'm not inclined to get up and go help them. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, if you want to do it, go for it. It's not going to hurt my feelings.
Exactly.
But I wouldn't be like, you like your grandmother who'd be like, oh, wait, no, let me get that, because it's just not how I was raised.
Sure.
So.
Sure. No, I get it.
And I'm not a good cook. And sometimes people request that I don't cook because I'm such a bad cook. They'll be like, hey, you know what? Instead of bringing food, why don't you just bring a bottle of wine? It's like, hey, no problem. I'd rather. It's much quicker. So
I think I'm going to give you a Christmas gift of some gourmet classes. Cook fast and easy.
I don't want to learn how to cook. I'm doing great just the way I am. So
I wanted to ask a question about the transactional. Do you find it to be more prevalent in sort of like the higher income ranges? Because I'm just thinking about historically, back when the royalty was running out of money, they sent, industry master, like Rockefeller's children, and all these people were sent over to take the money, and they had all these arranged marriages of nobles and rich Americans to, pull all that American money back to Europe to keep them from falling into ruin. Do you see that happening where it's sort of an expected or understood thing at certain
No,
level?
I haven't seen any difference between the ultra wealthy people that I've coached and then the very poor people I've coached. I've seen just as many out of either class. So I really think it has more to do with their family structure.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Lisa. I think that I was just thinking about that, and I was like, well, you have some people who are pretty conservative or not so much conservative, but, culturally the same as their background and as their the people, the family members before them, whether they live in squalor or whether they live in a mansion, and there's because the guy's going out squirrel hunting and he brings back the squirrels and he goes, there you go, baby. Cook it up. That's what I've done my job for the day. And I hate to use the accent thing because that doesn't mean everybody with an accent like that does that. My mom gets mad at me when I use my good old boy accent because she said you're being prejudiced. I'm like, oh god.
But you're getting your point across. Is that no? It doesn't. It doesn't. I
Exactly.
don't think it has anything. I haven't seen it, and personally, I haven't seen it has anything to do with your income level at all.
Yeah.
I think it's family. So a lot of times, and I used to think, well, since I didn't come from a broken home, if I dated or married somebody that also didn't come from a broken home, we'd get along fine.
No.
But if their family had that different family structure where the mom did all those stuff and the dad didn't do nothing but sit around and drink beer and complain, it still is going to not work. So you can't say just because I didn't come from a broken home and you didn't, that it is necessarily going to work. It's more, I think you really have to talk to somebody about how their family structure was, because usually people, I've seen them, they just tend to replicate their own childhood, what they saw growing up, and they accept that as normal.
Right. How were you brought up, Amy? And what was the situation, the dynamic in your house?
My parents are still married, 50 some years later. My mom stayed home most of the time. My dad worked. But then as soon as we were old enough to have non 100% parental supervision, she went back to work part-time. And by the time I was in high school, she was working full-time, and she worked full-time for many years. So she did choose to do the stay-at-home parent thing. But my dad was very involved. It wasn't one of those scenarios where, he came home and expected dinner on the table. He'd help cook. He did the yard work. He'd help clean. I mean, it wasn't like a his and hers type of a thing. And I married into a much more traditional family, where, the women cook and the men sit around and talk about politics after Thanksgiving
Yes.
dinner. And I completely screwed up the family dynamic after I married my husband. It was after a big family holiday dinner. All the women got up to clear the table, and the men were having a really interesting conversation about, and I refused to move. And I just sat there at the table, and there was everybody just kind of was looking at each other, not knowing what to do.
And the women were glaring at you like, what's wrong with you? You're just
exactly like, why are you not getting up? And so I turned to my husband. I said, I really want to stay here and finish this conversation. Do you mind, are you going to help clean up? So my husband stood up slowly and started to clear the table. And I stayed and talked with some of the men, and it was just, family was never the same again. So
it was a scandal.
It was for the better.
It was for the better. And then all the other men started to feel sheepish, and they started standing up and helping to clear the table. Because I just thought that was ridiculous, because that's not what would have gone down in my family.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I have a women clear the table. No way.
Yeah, I have a similar story. When I was dating this guy, he took me to his family for Thanksgiving. And, he has a really big family. And all the guys were sitting around watching football, and all the women were in the kitchen cooking. Well, I don't know how to cook. And I was in there watching the football game. And everybody's looking at me like I had 4 heads. They're just like, what are you doing in here? And so when the food was ready, all the guys got up from the couch and they went in and ate. And then they stood up and they went back. And I went back in to watch the game, and all the women cleaned up all the dishes and packed up all the leftovers and stuff. And the family never accepted me. They were like, this woman is not even a female. She's just, but I didn't really understand that whole dynamic where the men and women didn't communicate the whole time. Even after the dinner was over, the women stayed in the kitchen and talked, and the men stayed in the living room and talked. And I just thought, well, that's so bizarre,
Yeah. It's funny because my sister is our feminist in the house, and she's always like, you guys going to get up and clean up the, after we have like a dinner party or something like that. And we're like right in the middle of a conversation, she'll do that. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're playing. We can do that. We can clean up. But
I'm not a feminist or anything. I'm just a bad cook.
No. That's not my point. My point is my sister just is, and she's single, and she's like, no, we cook the meal. You guys clean up after the meal. And that's transactional right there. And that's where I'm sure that's why I don't think she's had anybody, she's not even really had boyfriends, but she's had lots of good friends that she hangs out with, and that's her thing. And she's just never, but it's because I think she looks at everything as transactional, and nobody is bringing to the table what she's bringing. So she ain't interested, I'm not interested in you if you're not bringing the same or more than what I'm bringing to the table. And she brings a lot to the table. So I understand where she's coming from.
And it's odd that you said that, because remember when the guy said that to me, what do you bring to the table? I was all like, oh, that's rude. I can't believe you said that. But now, as I've gotten older, when I meet somebody, I'm like, what do you bring to the table? Because most of them don't bring anything. They bring nothing at all.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's in it for me?
Me.
So, yeah.
I'm here. That's me.
But, if they want me to pay half their bills and cook all their meals and do all the grocery shopping and do their laundry and raise their kids and do this and this and that, where is it? What's in it for me? I'm just like taking on more work than what I need. You bringing nothing to the table.
I got some deer heads. I got some deer heads to bring to the table.
So, I've changed as I've been exposed to that more. It changed me to be like, what do you bring to the table? Because I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing more laundry to do, So
make sure you go ahead.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I've become exactly what I used to look at and think, oh, that's disgusting. But now I'm like, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah, sure, I get it. And I was going to say that Galen's parents they just didn't approve of you training their son out of what he used to do.
Probably. No, his dad loved it. His dad loved it.
Well, his dad loved you. That's the thing. My dad loves my wife. It's like this weird. My wife can do no wrong in the eyes of my father.
That is
funny. I am the guy that. Hey, Bailey, Lee, or not? Hey, Bailey. Hey, Lee. You better treat her right. Or you're gonna have me to answer to. Rah, 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 all that kind of crap. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Dad, don't worry. I treat her right.
I think it's good that transactional people come clean and let people know that they're looking for a quid pro quo. Better to know that if that's what you're looking for and you're happy with it, and that makes a good relationship. But I think I'd rather have them say what their expectations are, so you know what you're walking into, than to running off and getting married or doing something like that. Then all of a sudden they come out of their shell and say, oh, by the way, here's what I'm expecting.
Right. The day you move in with them, here's your list of chores. And I'm like, I didn't sign up that.
I've known a couple people who've gotten into those types of relationships.
Yes.
That everything was wonderful and magical and romantic. And then they get married. And then, 2 weeks after the honeymoon, suddenly the significant other, who's now the spouse, is looking at you like, where's this? Or why didn't you do that? Because, like you said, they're basing it on what they grew up with and their expectations, and they never talked about it before.
No, and I would
involved, and it just kind of amazes me.
Yeah, I've been in that situation. It's hard, when they hand you that list of rules, and you're like, I didn't sign up for any of this. I don't even have time for this. Yeah. And the other thing, as a giver, I tend to be a giver. But givers need to learn how to know when to stop giving, because takers don't know when to stop taking. So in the beginning, when I first got my list of duties, which I was unaware of that I was getting, but I got them, I started to try to fulfill my duties and do my role that I was supposed to play. But what I found was, soon enough, my dinner wasn't good enough. The laundry wasn't done the right way. The floor wasn't clean enough. I didn't take the trash out. So the more I gave, the more he was taking, and my list of chores got longer and harder. And, and I was like, wow, I really didn't sign up for this. I tried to play along for a little bit, but no.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that 100%. I think that one of the things that, of course I would have said, bag that dude in about 2 seconds. But, But I totally get the whole idea of being in a relationship with somebody and putting the front up, having the front up and until all of a sudden everybody's locked into their stalls and they get that list. I can't imagine a guy having the cojones to hand you a list of things that you're supposed to be doing. I mean, that would be something. I mean, we had the discussion about splitting up responsibilities before we got married. I mean, she's full-time teacher and I'm a full-time schmuck. And so, we together knew that I was going to have to take care of certain things, which I, very much let slip often. But, when we got married, we both had really good jobs. I fell into a health issue that has been prevalent for quite a while. But she's been, an anchor to help me get through that. And now it's transactional because guess what? If we weren't married, I wouldn't have health insurance.
But I think you and your wife came from a similar but I think you and your wife came from a similar type of background, didn't you?
Kind of. My wife, it's really funny because when we were getting ready to get married, I figured, and I have background in cooking and stuff like that. So, and I'm a pretty good cook. Although I haven't done it in 20 years, but my wife was didn't cook at all, and told me that I don't cook. I've never cooked in my life. My mom cooks all my meals. I've been living with my parents. When I was in college, we just went to the cafeteria, I don't cook. And I was like, all right, cool. But guess what? She cooks every meal we have. She's awesome at it. She cooks really well. Her mom cooked well too. I mean, she's not the gourmet that my mom likes to be sometimes, but my mom's not always either. But, Mary's very much meat and potatoes. Let's get it. But she knows how to cook. She's a great cook. My parents love coming over to the house to eat, and that's how you know.
Yeah.
If my mom wants to come and eat at your house, I mean, she knows the food's going to be good and that it's not going to be something that she needs to worry about. Because my mom's control freak, and that's the way moms are.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they love her to death, and she does. She's been cooking for 20 years. And I don't ever get a word in edgewise as far as cooking. I mean, I'm sure I've told her that before, and she said, well, you can cook whenever you want. I'm like, yeah, right. So, and I will. I'm the grill master, so, and I'm pretty damn good at it. Thank you very much. My chicken is always tender. Tender chicken. But I love grilling. And so that's what she'll say. All right, we're grilling tonight. Food's on you, but she fixes the salads and the sides and all that crap. I don't do all that. I mean, give me a can of beans, I can put them in a saucepan.
Yeah.
Just anyway. That's how.
Yeah,
it works
my idea of cooking is take something out of a can and put it into a pan and heat it up, or like get one of those bag salads that you just peel the top off and dump it on a plate and it comes with the dressing and everything in it. Yeah. That's how I cook.
Yeah.
And so, trying to be in a relationship with somebody who's expecting the meat and the potatoes and the steaks and the 4-course meals and stuff, I was like, hey, but he lost 60 pounds when he was living with me though. So. He got off of his high blood pressure medication. He got off of his heart medication, everything. He lost 60 pounds. I said, you can complain all you want, but you'd probably be dead if I didn't move in with you.
Exactly. I was just watching a Heineken commercial today, and the guy put the food down on the plates on the table, and he said, and the girls both took a bite of the food, and they're like, like, what in the hell did I just put in my mouth? And then he comes over, he goes, how's everything? And his buddy holds up his Heineken and says, great. And they cheers and drink their beers. And then, of course, they have that last second shot of him eating his own food and going, oh. So, yeah. So I can imagine they've lost weight in that house.
I mean, I won't let you starve, but, you might feel like it.
But it's going to be Campbell's chicken soup,
Yeah.
Have a nice day. Here's your soup. Here's some crackers. Have a good day.
Right. Yeah.
That's my kind of favorite. And to tell you the truth, that's my kind of meal, man. Just give me some soup and crackers, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be anything super size, super special.
Yeah.
It just. Anyway, I don't know how we got on the whole thing about food. I always send.
I don't know. I don't know. So
transactional relationships. So
yeah.
So those are the examples.
Yeah, and I think it's something that you have to talk about, before you get married or before you move in with somebody. Talk about how their parents, what were their roles? Who did the housework, who did the shopping, who did the cleaning, who did that, because you'll get a really good idea of how things are going to be.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I mean, I just got off the phone with a friend from high school, and our mutual friends were the 3 young ladies, the Taylor girls, and no one was allowed in the house after school. They were home alone because both their mom and dad both worked full-time jobs, and so they would come home, and they're 3 teenage beautiful girls. So the boys used to circle the house. And I don't know if you knew Christine Taylor or not, Amy, but yeah.
I don't think
Anyway,
so.
so Tammy and Christine and Lisa, her oldest sister, they they had certain jobs they had to do, and of course, sometimes they would let the boys in to do those jobs, just because they knew they could manipulate us and make us do whatever the hell they wanted us to do. Except for they had a narky neighbor who would narc on them if any boy ever went inside the house. But no, they had to vacuum the whole house every day. They had to come home, empty the dishwasher, clean. They had to clean bathroom. I mean, it was crazy the amount of work they had to do, including their homework. And I remember thinking, why don't you guys come outside with us? We got our chores to do. And they grew up with those chores. But I know this, Lisa, who I knew for I've known since then and for most of the time. Lisa is very much that person who cleans up every mess, is constantly always moving around, cleaning this or cleaning that or making this or making that, because that's how they grew up. That's what they're expected to do by their mom and dad, and therefore that's what they did, and it became natural to them that's what they were supposed to do. So her boyfriend, who's a chef, I'm sure I know she keeps the house clean, organized, and that's what she does. And then he, brings home the money and brings home some occasional good food from his restaurant that he works at. And so that's kind of I don't know if it was really a transactional relationship, but they got people doing their chores and their list, and it worked out.
Well, that's another thing. Like when you have children with somebody, how they raise their children is often how their parents raise them. So like my kids didn't have chores. I always had a cleaning lady and stuff like this. But then I dated other people, and they're like, "What? Your kids don't do chores?" I'm like, "No, let them. You're only a kid for just like this much time. They got another 80 years to do chores. I'm not going to put it on them now."
Yeah.
So there's that conflict of the child rearing, because this person was raised, with all these chores, and this person wasn't. So when they have children together, how do they raise them? Do the kids have a ton of chores or don't they? So
Yeah,
that's another source of conflict. But my camera froze up again.
Did it really? I can hear you good.
I know, and I can. Yeah, it's weird. I'll be right back.
All right. What kind of chores did you have to do when you were a kid, at least?
I have all the basic chores: clean your bedroom, clean the room, help with the dishes, help cook, vacuum, dust. Just pretty much everything.
Did you have to mow grass, or is that something you're doing?
I mowed grass until I realized my grass allergies were horrible. But I did. I mowed the grass until I realized I just couldn't breathe. So, we did all of that. Trimmed shrubs, cleaned out the deck. We did all kinds of stuff. But then, talking about the comparison, my husband grew up in a family where the boys did boy chores and the girls did the girl chores. And, he's 54 years old. He's 54 years old, and he's still learning how to do some of these chores. Like, how can you not know how to do that? Because he never was expected to learn how to do certain things.
Like laundry. Right.
He actually does laundry. He can do laundry.
No, I'm saying, but that would be considered, I think, if you wanted to be typing, I would say that's a girl chore. Even though I didn't have to do any of that, and my sister didn't have to do laundry either. We had to make sure our laundry, like my mom refused to pick up our laundry, but my grandmother would. So, we were, if Mammy was visiting somebody else somewhere else, one of her nieces or something, then we had to pick up our laundry and we had to take it to the laundry room. But my mom would clean it and she would fold it, and she liked doing laundry. She just didn't like picking it up, which I respect and understand that completely. My kids, well, I'm not even going to get into my kids. They're awesome, but they don't do nothing. So, they just do their thing. And they do stuff when we ask them to, no question.
Yeah.
We just don't ask them to do a steady chore.
Yeah.
We just have to be the ones that ask. And I'm the same way. I'll do anything you want, but you got to ask me, because I don't know. I don't think about what I should do. and that's caused.
Is that a guy thing?
I think it is. It's been a little bit of consternation in our marriage. You know what I mean? But I just tell my wife, I say, honey, I'm sorry. I know that you don't want to have to tell me to do stuff, but you know that whatever you ask me to do, I do. I don't bitch. I don't complain. I don't groan about it. I go, oh, yes, ma'am. I get up and I do stuff. But she's like, I'm not the manager of this house, you know? And I'm like, oh, well, you kind of are. Anyway, but.
So that's another thing. When you're dating somebody with kids, like I raised my two by myself completely. So when I was dating, I would have, people over, and people that I was dating would come over and my kids would get done eating and they'd just run off and go play. And the guy would be like, what? They're not going to pick up their dishes. They're not going to clean the plates. They're not going to do this. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. You're overstepping your boundaries here.
Yeah, these are
right?
my kids.
These are my kids. If you want to make your kids clean the dishes, you're welcome to do that. But no, that's not how I roll here.
It's
my
always,
kids. Yeah.
And it's always funny when that person doesn't have kids, but they're expecting you to.
Oh, yeah. And I did run into that one too. I'm like, you don't even have kids, so you don't even get a say in this. So, yeah. But then you have that who's gonna make the final decision here, so it's dating with kids is definitely complicated too.
Being married with kids is definitely complicated.
Anything with kids is complicated. Kids are complicated. But just on the topic of dating, that is another issue. Where the way I look at it is if I dated somebody with kids, I'm not going to overrule whatever they're doing. If they have chores, I'm not going to say, oh, you don't need to do chores. That's their kids. If they want to raise them like that, that's fine. But at the same time, they're not going to overstep the boundaries of my kids either. So
let's do next week's show about dating with children, and we can talk about all those different things. Because
I have
right
a lot
now,
of experience with that one.
You know what? And I got a million things going through my head that I think we can talk about, but we don't have the time, obviously, to do that. But we can wet our whistles a little bit. One of the things is I would have to say, would you agree? There's times, like when I was dating, and people had kids, and I maybe date somebody a little older than me. But I remember I didn't get married until I was 34. So I dated some people who had children, and that was fine. I love kids. But I will tell you that I'm like, I can't be in the house with you if that kid's a freaking menace and you're doing nothing about it. And I just like, well, that's the way, and that's their kid, that's their call. But I can't be around that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I can't be around that. And I would always try to be very careful about, I would try to distract that kid who was having issues or whatever and talk to him and whatever. And the mom was always like, wow, he's so good with them. He got him to calm down and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, but why am I calming your kid down? That's what I used to always kind of think to myself, like, yeah, this is a loaded gun right here. I don't know.
Yeah, if you can't handle somebody's kids, then you just walk away from that relationship. You can't step in and try to play daddy at that point.
But like I said, it wasn't me couldn't handle those kids. It was them not being able to handle their own kids that drove me crazy.
She was handling the way she wanted to,
I guess, yeah.
So it's just not the way you would have handled it,
No, yeah, I am no authoritarian for sure.
Yes, and nobody is. But we all raise our own kids the way that we want to, Yeah, and nobody appreciates. Yeah, and who appreciates having somebody outside of your family saying this is how you should raise your kids? That's a good way to get your ass kicked. You can't say that to anybody because I see people that treat their kids awful, and I want to say something, but I can't. Because it's not my place to.
Yeah, I know. And it depends. Because I have said something to somebody who was hurting a kid.
Had
him by the arm and was twisting their arm. And I said, hey, I know it's not my business,
Yeah.
but you need to let loose a little bit there. You're hurting them.
Mhm.
And I hear them
Yeah, if
say, mind your
somebody's-
business or whatever. And I'm like going,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, dude, you don't let them up, then I'm going to make sure you let them up. And you don't want that. You don't want to see that. I mean,
Yeah.
your kid doesn't want to watch me make sure that you take, whatever. I don't know. I've seen it a couple times. And I've said something,
Yeah.
and they usually
Yeah.
just bitch at me, but they loosen up, you know what I mean, and they stop smacking the kid in the back of the head or whatever it is. You need to stop
Yeah.
hitting her, or stop hitting him, because I've seen that happen, and I've told them. I don't stand by, you know what I mean. I you know me enough, Lisa and Amy. I don't stand by and let things not go right, and I understand corporal punishment.
There's a line. There's a line.
Yeah.
So, where you have to intervene, but
There is, and yeah.
Some people intervene at the first chance that they get, you know what I mean? And other people will wait and say, okay, now I can't handle this anymore, and then I'll intervene. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen kids get spanked. I'm like going, way to go, mom. And that's a whole nother issue when someone gets swatted on their diaper and that straightens them out, and
But,
they were not doing the right thing.
I've seen people like calling their kids names, and I don't like that one bit.
I've done that too. Yep. I've said that to somebody too.
And I don't like it, and I don't agree with it. But at the same time, I just tend to keep my mouth shut and walk away.
Not me.
Because I don't
Not
think,
me.
well, I don't think anything that I say to them is going to change the way that they're going to treat that child at home.
No, I say things like, hey, is that your kid? And they go, yeah. And I go, you love them, right? And they go, yeah. All right, well, maybe you want to treat them a little bit more like you love them than calling them those names. And I've done that before. And you know what? You see those guys going, yeah, you're right. I've had that happen.
Yeah.
I've had a guy who was getting pissy, and I could understand that what the problem was is that he was having a problem personally, and that that he was just frustrated and whatever, and so I came to more his rescue than the kids.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, dude, it's gonna be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah, so Lisa, sometimes it's more like I'm coming to the parents' rescue than the kids, because I know the parent is just fed up and they're freaking out, and I want to help them out. It's not so much that I'm afraid they're going to hurt their kid or anything. I just want to make sure that the conflict is can be mediated a little bit, and if I can do my part, then I'm going to do my part.
But, again, these people that grew up with their parents calling them names, they're likely to do the same thing to their kids. It's weird how,
I know,
everything our parents did, we accept as normal and good, even if it was terrible.
Yeah.
Well,
I tell them, I've told people that's inappropriate. You need to stop doing that. If you want to do that in your house, I would suggest you don't, but not.
But if you ask them, they're going to tell you, that's how my parents raised me, and look how great I turned out. And I hear that one all the time,
Maybe your parents should have been punched in the mouth.
Yeah, and I've talked to people, and I'm like, wow, you really are bad, hard with your kids, and they're like, hey, my parents did that to me, and I turned out great. And I'm looking at you no, you're a child abuser. How's that great? I'm not seeing it, right?
I worked out fine. No, you didn't, pal.
Yeah, that's everybody's excuse.
Exactly. Well, I want to say hi to Pat Malone. He joined it. He's liking our program. I want to tell people when they watch the program, please. I know I'm going to send this program. Actually, I thought this was a pretty good program tonight. Well, all of them are, but I'm going to send this out to some people, and those people who are watching it from the recording aspect of it, I'd like you to share that with your friends and family, and join us when we're live at 7:00 on Wednesday nights for Love Hacks. There it is, Love Hacks. And I spared everybody my song tonight, so I didn't play that.
Well, Billy will be happy about that one.
Yeah, see, I knew that he wasn't going to be watching, so I didn't play it. But I know that ticks him off. But, so I want to thank you very much, Lisa, as always. And Amy, thanks for coming in with us.
Sure thing.
We didn't let you get much of a word in edgewise. But
it's okay. It was really interesting to listen.
Well, Danny Meyer, my old...
He had a good perspective, too.
Yeah, she has an awesome perspective on everything, and that's why I like having
Yes.
her on all of our shows. She is a mainstay, just like you are, and so there's I like having my group of people, especially my gals. Love having my group of gals. I'm gonna have to have an all-girl show just so I can be the only guy. Well, that's what this is right now.
What are you doing? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I want to say hi. Danny Meyer just gave us a thumbs up. So I imagine he's been watching. I miss that guy. He's a coach that we used to cover when I used to do high school sports in the area. And Danny and I forged a friendship that's been pretty tight for a long time. So thank you, Dan, for watching and tuning in to and giving us a like. I appreciate that. That's what we need. More likes and shares. Ladies, thank you. It's time for us to wrap the show up.
Thank you.
Any last
take care,
words, Lisa?
No,
Any
just
last
take care of
words?
yourself.
All right, I will. I'll take care of myself. I'll take care of as many
See you
people
next
as
week.
I can. Yep. All
Yeah,
right. Take
I know
care.
you
Thank
will.
you, Amy.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You're the best.
Bye,
Take care.
Amy.